Welcome back to the show. Thank you, Stephen Timoney, for coming on the show today. I'm so grateful to have you here. I want to start off with your Twitter bio. As someone that's not much on Twitter, you captivated me a lot with your Twitter bio, and I think as having 67,000 followers, it makes a whole lot of sense why people come to your page. And I'll read it off. It goes, on a mission to help millions of people do less dumb shit and fulfill their potential, but mostly helping business owners save at least 10 hours a week. So I want to dive deep into what is your main mission in life? What pulled you to get into that being your mission?
That's funny that stood out for you. But yeah, great to be here. Great to be on your pod, man. Thanks for inviting me. The dumb shit is something that's kind of sort of dear to my heart.
Yeah,
because I did a lot of dumb shit. We were talking before we jumped on here, and you're 19. When I was 19, I was in nightclubs drinking, partying, and I did that for about a decade no, not quite, maybe a little bit less than a decade, until I was in my mid to late 20s. So I did a lot of dumb shit. And what I found was when I got into my personal development journey, that the whole personal development sort of industry is predicated upon you doing new things. Start this habit, start that habit, do this routine, do this system, read this book, do this thing. But what I actually found, and what I actually find with the clients that I now work with, it's the removal that is actually the thing that moves you forward. That's the actual juice that you want to squeeze out of your life. It's removing the dumb shit. It's removing the self-sabotage. It's removing the things that are slowing you down, are actually the things that are going to get you to the next level. I think there's a great quote that says that, I think it's from a guy called Dan Sullivan, who's a high-level entrepreneurial coach. Says 80%. It's brilliant. 80% of what you're doing today is holding you back, because he's big into the 80-20 rule and a lot of it's working. And I thought that quote is huge for me, because when I even think of that, there's just a part of me that pushes back on that idea. 80% of what I'm doing today hold me back? No way. No, it can't be 80%. But yeah, no. 80% of what you're doing today is the dumb shit that's actually holding you back, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever that is, internally, externally. Yeah. So that's where that comes from. That's my mission. I want to help people fulfill their potential. I don't want people to waste this miracle that they have. Yeah. I wasted 10 years. I mean, I got a lot of lessons out of it, so it's not a waste. But the way I look at it is, I think everybody has layered on too much dumb shit in their lives with social media, the way our minds are getting warped with the short form content, the culture war, the made up culture war, in my opinion, of all this like information where you got to choose sides. Everybody's so polarized. And I think it's just like, we've got to find the signal in all the noise. And for me, the signal is removing a lot of dumb shit. So that's my opening from that first question.
I love that so much, because there's a quote from Leonardo da Vinci that says, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Yes.
And something that I've seen in my clients too is that I think we overcomplicate things in our mind, because we always like to keep our goals like at arm's length away, because that makes us stay where we are. And what is the most, or do you think there's like a one commonality between all of your clients that stood out the most, that has really, impacted you, or something that you've overcame yourself?
I think for me, that the big one that every single one of my clients falls into is open loops. Too many things on. Like, even in my own life, that's, and it kind of goes back to the dumb shit a little bit, but I think successful people who are driven, people who are trying to improve, I work with a lot of business owners, so you've already got to be a certain type of mindset to be that kind of person, to take on the full responsibility of your income, and take on the full responsibility of creating something out of nothing, like a lot of business owners do. But because we're set up like that, I think we try to then do lots of things. We think that we can do more than what we can, and then I was going to swear, but I'm not going to use the F word there. I was going to say it messes you up. I was going to use the F word. And that actually brings in a lot of procrastination, a lot of overwhelm, a lot of stress to clients, because they've got families, they've got businesses, they've got projects, and they jump into things with friends and are like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And then they've got all these projects and open loops, mentally, emotionally, in their life, holding them back. And typically the first month or so, most of my clients, it's like I've had clients close businesses because of working with me. Because they've realized the thing that they're working, they're no longer enjoying it, and it's actually become a negative in their life. And they're like, "Oh my god, I've been holding on to this like small business with a partner for like years,
Yeah.
but it's actually the thing that's slowing me down." So I'm big into a thing called constraint theory, where it basically says we're the bottleneck. Again, it kind of leans into the dumb shit theory, but we are the bottleneck in our lives. So if we're not constantly auditing ourselves and seeing what works for us, that's the stuff that's slowing us down. So I think that's the one common thread that I see of all my clients, and I've been hyper aware of that in my own business, and almost to the detriment of my own success. I think I haven't jumped into fast, quick stuff. Like I am quite large on Twitter, not large, I'm not one of the biggest accounts. I'm in the top 200,000, I think, of on Social Blade when you go on there.
Yeah.
But I've never leaned into Twitter growth guides or, learn how to grow your social media stuff. And I just don't feel it's not something I'm inspired to do. I know it would be air quoting easy money, but it's just not something that I look at it and be like, that's an open loop, because that's not towards the destination I want to go in my life. That's not where I want to go with my business. So why build a bridge in that direction to something that I'm not really that motivated about? Yes, there's a bottom line dollar number that I could add to my monthly recurring revenue, but so that's a quick explanation of what open loops has sort of made me aware of what I do in my day to day.
Absolutely. I think that it's kind of like the idea that just because we can do something doesn't mean we should, right? Like
yes.
Going back to simplicity of how can we simplify this to make it as easy as possible to do. Like you said, 80% of what you do is holding you back from getting to where you want to go. But in the same sense, 20% of what you need to do is probably the 20% that you're avoiding for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
In your life and in your clients, what is something that whether you've overcame that you feel not only your clients deal with, but something that you feel just in general everyone deals with in the world when it comes to whether it's self-sabotage or procrastination?
Good question. I think it can be quite varied for different people. So I'll probably go with sort of a personal response, something that I've had to overcome. And I think for me, and this is going to sound funny, but it's the 100% responsibility, because I think that when I worked in corporate, and if someone was to sit down with me, and say, how responsible are you for your life? I would say I'm 100% responsible.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, because I was getting paid by an organization. So my theory, and something I've overcome or I am growing or expanding into, is this idea that our awareness of what 100% responsibility is in our lives keeps getting bigger, or we understand it more. And I think when I first started a business, I struggled, and I think I let the emotional side, maybe become a little bit of a victim, got upset when things weren't going my way. You write a thread, or you spend weeks doing stuff and then you don't get results, and you get frustrated and angry about it. And then you realize that that's actually the wrong way to approach those things, because work doesn't equal results. Hard work doesn't always guarantee results. And that was a big thing, because coming out of corporate, I would do work, and every time I would do work, I would get a pat on the back.
Yeah.
Like, Steve's great. I'm constantly being promoted. And when I was working in corporate, I think I had about 9 promotions over about 9 years. If you go on my LinkedIn, just the 2 organizations I last worked for, was constantly just being moved into different positions. Yeah. And that was a big thing for me that I had to overcome when I first started a business 18 months plus ago. Early last year, I had a business kind of going before I left my corporate job. But that the first few months, maybe even 6 months of having a business, that was a big hurdle for me to overcome. That was a real growth period for me. I love it, the fact that I did it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, that's a big thing for me. Is that understanding of 100% responsibility and what that means when you're an entrepreneur, compared to having 100% responsibility when you're working for
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah, I think that responsibility is something that's so huge. Before this podcast, I was doing a solo episode of like the mindsets that successful people have. And one of them was that they always want to be the problem. Like they want to take the blame, because if you don't, most of the time, and I think you probably see this in your clients too, is the problems that we deal with today, if we don't face them today, we're going to continue to deal with them years from now. So we have to take responsibility of them today, or we're going to continue getting the same lesson and never learning it. And I think that that's a really big part of it. And after being in retail for 10 years and growing into it in the management, and then making a bold move, jumping to Canada and really noticing that you had to change your environment, what was the moment that shifted in your mindset to actually just finally make that shift and go into business altogether?
It was a slow growth period. I think it's like it's a slow burning fire. Yeah. It started, my back end of my 20s when I was partying, sort of living for the weekend, falling into that kind of hedonistic, treadmill that a lot of people fall into, and I think in your 20s, it's quite easy to do because you're out, you're going to nightclubs, you're drinking, you're, dating the girls, you're doing the stuff, and you think that's what life's all about. And then sometimes you don't really have those role models to show you any different, because, I mean, to be fair, most of the people around me, their parents all just worked for different organizations their whole lives, and a lot of the people around me were just doing the same thing. It was like, go to work, save money, buy a house, work in a cubicle, and I think I was the back end or the first generation. I feel like I'm in my early 40s, so I felt like we were the first people, and I might be wrong when I say this, but we started to realize, hold on a second, we just can't get a job and have all the things that our parents had.
Yeah.
We're like, I'm working, but I don't have a house and 2 cars. Why is this? What, hold on a second. What's going on? What's going on here? And I think that really stood out for me. The other thing, the slow burner for me, when I wanted to get away from the party scene, I was living in England at the time. That's where I went to university and I stayed. And I had an opportunity to move to Canada, and it was like 2009 sort of time period. And I did it because I thought, hey, at least 1 year in Canada will just get me away from everything, and I can use it as an opportunity to see stuff, grow. But when I got to Canada, I realized I wanted to stay in Vancouver because it's I mean, come on, it's Vancouver. It's a beautiful city. But from there, I think Vancouver has it's Canadian, but it has kind of an LA vibe to it, that there's a lot of success here. There is a lot of money here. Like when I lived in England, in the towns in England, there was rich people, but I think you see it more here. I think it's very more prevalent here. It's a very beautiful city. A lot of
it's tangible. Like that's how
it's tangible. Yeah, you're literally rubbing shoulders with, like, there's a lot of movies being shot here. There's a lot of big things happening here. And I moved out here, and the Olympics was here that year, so it was like everything. Stuff. Yeah, it was brilliant. The Winter Olympics in 2010. It was such a fun month, and to actually say you've been to an Olympic, like being in the city during the Olympics, it's pretty cool. I like it. World Cup's coming here soon as well to Vancouver in 4 years' time, so that's going to be freaking awesome. But so the slow burn, going back to the question, was like when I stayed in Canada, I kind of had this like, no more. I'm not going to go back to the partying, and I want to try to be better. And I ended up getting a visa to stay. There was a couple of years of real struggle of working, like, I think I was working for like $14.95 an hour, which is like 31K Canadian, which is like 25K USD. In one of the most expensive cities in the world. I was on the poverty line for a couple of years. No credit cards, no support from friends and family, like living in a house with 6 other people, and it was like a crack house. And it really, it in a poor part of Vancouver, if you could describe any part of Vancouver poor. And it really taught me a lot of lessons about how to manage my money, how to manage my time, how to be effective, like stuff that I maybe ignored in my 20s because I had credit cards, I had an okay job, I had support from parents if I ever got into trouble. Then I removed all that for a couple of years, and it really taught me a lot of lessons. And then when I had the opportunity to change jobs, when I got my visa and I was actually able to go and work somewhere else, I ended up, because I'd worked in retail management my whole life, I ended up just looking for the most expensive high-end stores in Vancouver. And I started working for really high-end luxury sales because I thought, hey, I already know retail. I already know this job, but where can I go and get paid more money.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I went straight from like earning 30K to nearly 100K in the space of like a year or so, because I just went into those sales environments, commission sales environments, selling high-end suits to the rich and famous of the world of Vancouver. Yeah. And but while I did that shift, there was this idea about, well, I'm going to try to climb this corporate world, because I didn't really know a lot about the internet at that time. We're talking 2010, 12, 13. I don't think the internet was there, but it wasn't as, I don't think it was as, it still wasn't as accessible as it is now. And I was still very much in the old mindset of find jobs, climb ladder, get big money. Yeah. And I fell into that was my goal for a good 4 or 5 years. And I started reading a ton of leadership books, and leadership led me to personal development, and then personal development led me to reading about more business stuff. And then the next thing you know, I'm deciding that I don't want to work in retail anymore. And then I switch over to insurance, thinking, hey, I'll go to this thing. And then I became a project manager, did all the project management stuff. And then I just kept going. But the whole time I just felt this like voice or this feeling, there's more responsibility. There's more that I can do. And then finally, when the pandemic hit, Twitter blew up for me, and I just I placed the bet on myself. So that's a very long answer to your question, but it was a slow burn. It wasn't like I decided when I moved to Canada, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to become a business owner. It was literally, I started on a personal development journey that was around leadership, trying to climb a corporate ladder. And then as I learned all this personal development, marketing, business, self-improvement, self-help stuff, a lot of it was written by business coaches who are business owners, and you're getting these ideas and you're like, I think I could do this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that answer, because you hit so many points that I wanted to touch on. One being that kind of the recognition that it isn't one day that everything changes. Like it's an evolution of growth and expansion that you have to go through. And I think that noticing that it has to start in the personal aspect of things, and you may notice this or live by this with your clients as well, is that your professional development will never exceed your personal development. So if you're not at a point where you don't truly believe that you can do such thing, then you're going to avoid the 20% that's going to have the most impact. And I know that leadership was a big role, obviously being in retail management and growing and expanding and seeing that corporate ladder as kind of like that next step, and then coming to the awareness that you can have something outside of it. Like that was the same thing for me when I read, I think it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was like, wait, I don't have to I don't have to do an hourly wage. Like I can live, like I can do what I want, when I want, with who I want, whenever I want. And it was like such a mind-boggling kind of experience for me. And it just led me down a path of like personal development and business growth and everything in that realm. What was there a leadership book or a few that really had a massive impact on you that kind of that pushed you down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, the book that really, it's not a leadership book, but funny story. I bought it thinking it was a leadership book, but it was actually a self-help book. It was Robin Sharma's book, The Leader Who Had No Title. Ooh. I was walking through a bookstore, and I think it had just been released, or it was on sale, or it came out in paperback or something. And they had the bookstore in Canada, they're called Chapters, and they had a big table display of it as I walked into their main store in Vancouver. And I walked by it, and I was just getting into that job where I was getting into that retail job, and I starting it from leaving my crap $14.95 an hour job in Vancouver. I got into this sort of luxury sales job, and I was like, hey, I'm going to pick up a bunch of leadership books. And I picked up that book, and I picked it up pretty much the weekend that I started that job, I think. But it took me 6 months to actually get around to reading it, because I wasn't a great reader back then. So it was not a shelf help rather than self-help. It was on my shelf. And I ended up picking it up and reading it, thinking, oh, it's a leadership book, let's go. And it wasn't. Robin Sharma, as probably everybody is aware of, is one of the sort of like the self-help gurus who I actually got a lot of time for. I think his stuff's pretty good. He doesn't do a lot of the sort of like the guru sales kind of stuff of his email list. It's just pretty much sort of like a straightforward kind of like, I'm here to help you kind of guy, which I like about him. And I got into his books, but I read that book, and that was a massive book for me. Huge in a sense. really helped me with, meditation, journaling, having the structure, having goals, like having this sort of like future version of yourself that you're moving towards. That was a really big impact on me. When it comes to actual leadership books, anything back then by Simon Sinek and Dan Pink, I devoured their books. I devoured their online content. I got into behavioral economics as well. The thinking fast and slow and nudging and all this kind of stuff. And then I read a lot of sales books, but leadership wise, if I was to, it's the Daniel Pink and Simon Sinek books that really helped form ideas that I think I already had in me as a leader, because I'm very much I'm very much, as a leadership, I've always been like, it's about the people. Like, this is kind of funny, but as a leader, I'm like, I shouldn't be doing a lot of work.
So true. It's so true, though.
I shouldn't be doing the work. I should be training my staff to give them the capabilities so they can do the work at a high level and they can progress and grow. But I'm there for the staff, and I think a lot of leaders think that they're the star. Mm-hmm. No, you're the guide. And as a coach now, I'm the guide. I'm the guy. I'm not the hero of my journey. I'm not the hero of my Twitter page. I'm a guide trying to help people get to the next level. If I was the hero, people wouldn't want to work with me because like I'm the, it's like, so I'm very much like that's been my sort of leadership style, and then now my coaching style is like, my goal is to, side note, that's one of the reasons why I'm probably not really big into the sort of the low dollar
growth kind of play,
growth things, because I like working with people where like 80 or 90% of the people I work with actually get a result.
Yes.
Where I feel like if you sell a PDF, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with selling PDF. I'm not, listen, do you, but there's just something about me, something in this. I want to see the results. I want to work with people, and I love leadership. I genuinely read tons of books. I've got a bookshelf over there and it's pretty much mainly leadership books and, kind of like business development strategy books and stuff and everything, and project management, getting the project management. But I love working with people. I genuinely have this like buzz, wanting to work with people one-on-one. So that's been my single sort of like narrow focus when it comes to my business, is I want to work with people. That is like, what is success defined for me? Success is defined, I want to work with people. I want to help people be successful. Maybe that will look at move into a group cohort or something larger as I progress. But at the moment, I love working one-on-one with all my clients.
We are a lot alike in that way, because I love, like I say it, and I've said this probably a couple of times on this podcast, is that after a coaching call, I get this thing, and my clients, we've kind of like had this running joke that it's called like coaching crack. After a coaching call, you get so much energy. It's not comparable to anything else in the world. You don't need coffee. It's like working one-on-one and seeing that result and helping someone work through their blind spots in life and business is like one of the most rewarding things in the world. And I never want to detach from that. Just like you said, it's like it's not that you're working overly like to the point where you can't work anymore, but you're the overseer, you're the guide. And like the brand script journey with Donald Miller, that helped me really change a different perspective on my being it. As someone that is like, rather than seeing yourself as the hero, no, your client is the hero and you're the guide to help them fulfill their journey. I'm curious for you, what's a commonly held belief that people live by? Maybe it's your clients before they start working with you, or just in general that you've seen, whether it's on Twitter or in your life, that you just completely disagree with.
Oh, I mean, that's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that for a second. A commonly held belief. For me, optimization is a pile of crap. Elon Musk optimizes. Usain Bolt optimizes. Yeah. We don't optimize. We sort our shit out first. We get our goals. We get our why. We get our vision. We sort our performance out. We get our direction. There are 1,000 things for people to do before you optimize. And it winds me up a little bit when I see a lot of optimization guys, and most of them are your age or a little bit older, talking to people like, we're going to optimize your day. No, get out, get your coat, get out. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of people like coming at productivity. I don't just see myself as a productivity coach. I try to call myself a self-performance coach. Yeah. I try to call, doctor of dumb shit. As you know, that's kind of my idea of like I'm trying to in there removing the crap from my clients' lives to help them get clear on success and stuff and what they want out of life. But the optimization trap, I see so much of it. I see so many threads about it. I see so much people talking about it. I think far too many people listen to Andrew Huberman and then like, you know, post the stuff out. It's like they understand the concepts, and I'm like, you know, it's optimization is you need it, and you need to optimize your workflow. You need to optimize things. You need to simplify. You do need to at a certain point, but
Absolutely.
it's not where you start. It's not the first step. It's like if it was a 5-step journey, it would be, for me, it'd be step 5.
Yeah. What and I'm in full like support of that too, because if you don't have clarity, then what are you optimizing? Like, what are you
Yeah,
optimizing for? What are you optimizing for?
exactly. And I talk about this with some of my clients, and I've said it before to people. It's like you can't polish a turd,
Mm,
and you know you can quite vulgar, but you know you can't make shit look good. I mean, you can shine it up, you can cover it in glitter, but it's still shit. So we need to go and actually remove the shit, and then once the shit's gone, then we optimize. And I think a lot of the times where people fall into the trap, and I've had clients do this, and this is why actually a handful of clients have worked with me, is they when you go online and you search about how to be more productive or how to run your day, it's
mhm.
very much driven about optimization, time blocking, Pomodoro technique, you know, have your schedule done, your colorful calendar. And then people don't actually do the engine work, go and fix their engine. They then layer on top all this BS. And then it might work for a week or so. They might get some results and like, oh yeah, I time blocked and I did the Pomodoro technique and then I batched everything on one day and I got results. But then it just sort of like peters out because it's like the energy and the motivation goes. And that's because they didn't actually fix their why, their vision, what they're doing, what does success look like. A lot of times as well, people pull goals and figures, like their targets, out of thin air. They're
Mhm.
just like, hey, I want to do 1 million this year.
Yeah.
Where's the data to support that? Uh, so it's yeah. No, I'll
I,
stop there.
because I agree so much. It's crazy. I think we focus, and comes down to like I think for Twitter example is like the platitudes of like the optimization 10 search engines that'll help you optimize your work schedule or whatever it comes down like
Yeah.
it's subtle things, but if you're not, I think we focus too much on the how instead of the why. Like, well,
Yes.
how am I going to get there? Well, let's focus on why we want to go there to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the why is just like a huge part of it. The why and defining success and having rules for me, those are big things. Having your performance rules, your success rules, defining success. You know, there. I use this analogy quite a lot, but we have this target, and then we want to build bridges towards that target. But when you don't have a target, you can build bridges off into all these different directions. And the next thing you know, you're on islands you didn't even want to go and visit. Might be a nice, pretty island for somebody else, but for you, it's not the right island. And I think that's the major problem. Again, we go back to say to what's a common theme of a lot of my clients.
Yeah.
That's another common theme is the lack of clarity of their what does success look like, and not just in their business, mental, emotionally, physically, with family, you know, internally, externally. Like, what are you expanding into?
Yeah.
What are you expanding into? And when you ask that question to a lot of people, they freeze because they don't have that clarity of like, well, what am I? Where am I going?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a huge part of it. Like they say, 95% of people don't have goals written down.
Every day.
Now we're in a space on air quotes again, money Twitter, where that percentage is probably 80% of people don't have their goals written down. We're in a unique position where probably a higher percentage of people are actually in that mindset.
Yeah.
But I like I've worked with coming up on probably close to 20 clients, whether that's one-on-one or in cohorts
Yeah.
in the last 18 months. And I would say it's about 90% of them actually haven't, you know, some of them did have some clarity, but obviously it can be tweaked. Even my clarity can be tweaked because we're always growing, we're always progressing. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a Jedi Knight and have everything figured out. That would just be, disingenuous of me. But yeah, it is a big thing, and I think it's a step that I think because we're so smart, a lot of people are quite smart, and they're they're going places, and they're very cerebral. They're right in there. A lot of people are right in their head, that they actually forget about the fundamentals or the basics of actually clarifying this. Because if you don't clarify it, as I said, you can build bridges for years to places you didn't want to go.
I love every aspect of that. I think there's two sides to look at it. Like you have to obviously start before you're ready, but you also have to be clear on why you're starting, why you want to go towards that destination. I think, like you said, it's like, oh, I want to hit 1 million a year. It's like, why? Are you defining your success as someone else's success and you're just adapting it because you think it'd be nice? Or is that actually what you want? Because I think identifying your definition of success is one of the most powerful things you can do. Yeah. Because then you're actually, I think that a lot of the lack of intention that we have is that we feel that we're going towards a success that we think we want, but deep down our subconscious knows it's not what we want. And so we avoid it, and we put it off, and we put it off till another day. Is there principles, or is there a strategy that you have that you work with your clients through that kind of really solidify self-performance so that after they're done working with you, like they can sustain that long term? I think that's something.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of tools, exercises and stuff. I mean, it's not just one. Yeah. It's a variety of things. I mean, there are some general ideas, but I think for me, it's getting that clarity, removing the dumb shit and focusing on wins. It's momentum. It's clarity, momentum, removal, clarity, momentum. It's just this loop of that. And there's lots of exercises to go in that. A big thing for me, I think, is this idea of having a future self is 10x. It's a 10x version that you want to go to. But for me, 10x, and this is maybe another sort of contrarian view, 10x for me is not quantitative. It's qualitative. It's 10x your standards, 10x your mental abilities, emotional abilities, physical abilities, 10x how you show up in your life. And I think a lot of people get 10x wrong because they went and read Grant Cardone's book.
So true.
I mean, there's some good stuff in there about like being relentless and working harder. There is some decent stuff in there, but majority of that book is I'll not, because Grant Cardone's a very wealthy person and very successful, so I don't want to say anything. But I don't agree with a lot of what that book says when it comes to 10x. There is some gold in there. It's a motivational book. It's like if you want to. Oh, true. Listen to a book that's going to give you like a shot in the arm to maybe jazz you up for a few days or a few weeks while you're listening to it. Yeah, sure enough. But it's the concept of 10x. He's like, work harder. No, 10x is simplifying. It's about quantity. It's about less quantity and higher quality. So instead of doing 4 threads a week that are, you're doing 1 thread a week on Twitter that is just banging. So that's the 10x leap. But the reason why I bring that up is a lot of clients, they have these like big figures or these big goals. And a lot of people are just in general, when you ask them what their goals are, and some of them have these goals and they're either way too small or they're massive. Like, oh yeah, I want to do 5 million in the next 3 years. And you're like, well, what are you doing right now? Well, I haven't started my business yet, but my goal is to make $5 million in the next 3 years. And you're kind of like, that's based on just, as you said, just there about that sort of like, it's just based on this idea. It's not like based on why. It's not based on data. It's not based on where you're going. And I've made that mistake in my life recently. In the last 2 years, I've made that mistake, and it's definitely something that I've realized that quite. It's not hit me quite hard, but like it's this sort of idea at the start of the year when you turn the calendar year, like, you know what, I think I'm going to go for this amount of money this year.
Yeah.
And you don't really think about, well, what did I do last year? And if I 10x that number, what does that actually look like? Because that's actually more likely what you're going to do. And also you're more likely going to do 3x and 5x of what you did last year. But you set the 10x goal as a stretch target, but it's based on data. But very, very few people base their goals, personal goals like that. Now, there are some business owners out there that will base their goals financially on that because they have the data. But when you get into their personal lives, it just kind of becomes a blur. But anyway, I went off on a thought train there. So
yeah, no, I like you're hitting every point that I wanted to hit on this podcast, because when it comes to, and I did read 10X, and I think the same thing. When you read the book, it's a good book to read when you're at the gym, not something to like actually take action.
Yeah, it is a good gym book. Grant Cardone yelling in your ear. One more rep. Let's go.
It's like another David Goggins, but in a business aspect of things.
Yeah, no, it's right. It kind of, yeah, but totally. I've never actually listened to Goggins on a book. This book's what's it called again? It's very good.
Can't Hurt Me. Can't Hurt Me is good.
Yeah. But I'm not. I had the audio book of Grant Cardone 10X, and he was like his gravelly like Southern voice just yelling at you in your ear. It's funny.
I think that the principles in the book are coming from a good place. Like setting, there's a point of it that is like set a goal 10 times bigger than you want to set a goal, because even if you don't reach that, you're going to reach higher than what your original goal set. So I think the principles are great.
Great concept. That's a concept that I'm leading.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is probably the best concept out of the book, is to set a goal, but then 10x it, and then ask yourself, how could I actually make that goal? But let me tell you a story. But can I tell you the story of what the mistake I made?
Please.
So I 5x my business this year compared to last year. But at the turn of this year, at the start of this year, I actually made up a number, and then I 10x that number, and that number was the number was 250K that I wanted to do this year, which I'm going to fall short of, just to be transparent, by a bit. But I then 10x that, and it was 2.5 million. But it wasn't based on data. It was just like, it just sounded nice.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounded nice. And when I actually go back, when I actually halfway through the year, I actually went back and started like doing the math. And I was like, holy shit, I shouldn't actually be aiming for 250K this year. That's not a reasonable goal based on my data. So I actually did my numbers. And compared to what I did last year, this year, I'm going to 5x or 7x, because I've got a client, obviously I've got a month left. My actual business that I did last year, because I only started my business last year, so I only worked like three or four clients, and my prices have gone up since I started working. So when I redid my numbers, like in April or June, May, when I actually got a bit deeper into the concept, reading some Dan Sullivan stuff, some Dr. Benjamin Hardy stuff, and I realized after reading the Grant Cardone book, I was like, well, I've got this 10x thing, this 10x thing wrong. Yeah. That based on data, I'm actually having a really good year. If I actually look at my data, based on my actual numbers and based on actual growth, based on actual reality. And I think that's something that really stands out. It's like a lot of these concepts you read in books, and someone says, set this massive goal, these big, they used to call them BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. But everything should be based upon your past 6 months or a year. Like they talk about with stocks, past results don't equal future results, but can be a good predictor.
Right.
But if you're saying that you're going to go from zero business to 5 million in 18 months or 3 years, I'm not saying it's not impossible. People have done that, but those are unicorns.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you just don't start a business and then, 5 years later from never being an entrepreneur before, 3 years later, never been an entrepreneur. We talked about another creator we both like before jumping on here, Dan Coe, who's been at it for 3 or 4 years, and he's coming up at 700K this year, and he's talked about how he's going to go for $1 million or plus next year, which I read, and I hope he does it, and a brilliant guy, lovely guy to speak to. But he's been at it for 3 or 4 years, and now he's getting to that $1 million a year solopreneur business where a lot of us want to go to with our businesses. So you can actually see within his journey, and he talks about it. It's like a 5, 6, 7 year cycle to get to that point. And I think a lot of people, again, we talk about this idea. You hear people talking about the overnight success. Well, the overnight successes are usually 10 years long. So it's
so true. There's a point, and I don't remember, I want to say it was probably Robin Sharma, to be completely honest, but there was a book that I read, and there was a point in it was that success isn't a destination, but it's a process. So it's like, not like there's not going to be a day where like you get to 1 million in a year. It's a process of getting there. And I think that when we set big goals compared to other people, again, it comes down to that definition of success. Then it becomes like it's almost insurmountable. We see it as such a broad thing instead of like reaching like what would be actually maybe practical for next year, how can we set a little bit higher than that based off last year, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's a lot easier to have more motivation and that drive to continue when your goals make sense. So
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, whether it's within your life or for your clients, when you feel maybe it's overwhelmed or you feel unfocused, what is something that you do? Is there a practice? Is there a keystone habit that really makes you more efficient and increases your self-performance that you just go back to?
Yeah, my keystone habit, the one habit that rules them all, the big domino each day is meditation, sitting on the sofa for me.
Yeah.
That is, if I do that, which I didn't get to do this morning because I got up and jumped on this podcast. But when I'm feeling stressed out, I can tell you that it's because I'm not meditating regularly in the morning. The second keystone habit that I have is going for long walks in the afternoon. Now, there are people who love the walks in the morning. I'm not a walk in the morning kind of guy. I've thought about it, but I like getting to work. But I can tell you, my life is significantly better if I'm regularly going for an hour walk in the afternoon. When you hit that like 2-3 o'clock dip and you want to go for a nap, that's my sign to leave the house to go for a walk.
That's the one. If you, I'm like I said, I'm mainly on Instagram, but I post probably every single day. As you know, Dan Coe, like he talks about like walking a lot, and
Yes.
that's something I find very in common. I know you're on Twitter mainly, but my Instagram, I post probably at least once a day or like a couple days a week of going a walk. It's like what I want to be known for, because it's something that I found so much value in, not only for creative like thinking, but just problem solving. I find that you're able to, in that gap where you feel like that afternoon slump, instead of like going back to what you're used to and being comfortable taking a nap or just ending the day, let's go on a walk and let's see where we can find the solution to the problem.
Couldn't agree more. That is. Sorry, I was just looking for my dog. Looking around me because I used to go for dog walks.
Yeah,
but he stops so often that he actually stops the train of thought.
Yeah.
So I tend to listen to an audiobook now when I'm with the dog walk, and then when I go on a single self walk, sometimes I listen to an audiobook, sometimes I just listen to music, sometimes I don't. It just depends what mood I'm in. But yeah, the walking is just, I first heard about it from the Stoics. The Stoics is one of the Stoic practices is to go for a walk. I have to say that I got into it, then I stopped it, and I was very stop-start with it. But this year in particular, over the last sort of maybe 12 months, if not a bit more, ever since really becoming a business owner and not having to be stuck in an office, it's become a big thing. When I used to work in an office, I always used to go for a walk on my lunch hour, just around the building. I used to, where a lot of my colleagues would drive to the local mall to get lunch, I would walk over and then walk, but the 10-minute walk there and the 10-minute walk back, because I'm like, I need that space. So it's been a big part of my journey. But I had, like, honestly, after COVID, I got up to about 190 in weight, and I was struggling to get back down to the 175, 180 where I like to be, and where I've been since I was in my, in my 20s, and I struggled with it. And I was going back to soccer, and I was like, is that the gym? What is it? I was like, calorie. I was like, I was looking at my diet and stuff, and I wasn't able just to do my normal stuff anymore. And then all of a sudden I committed to walking an hour a day, and the weight just...
It is one of the... Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, because this is just... I'm so passionate about walking, you probably tell. It's something that I didn't realize had such a massive impact on my life, but growing up, I struggled sleeping. It was like my just overactive brain couldn't make it stop. And I live in upstate New York, so it was snow, it was whatever. But only thing that would like give me any kind of, like, I guess, mental clarity was I'd go on a walk. It'd be snowing at 3 a.m, and I'd literally go on a walk to my school and just walk around the track for an hour just to get out of my head, because it was the only way I found clarity in what I was doing. And it's been such a massive habit for me. It's definitely my keystone. Is there any, because I kind of want to get back to self performance and everything, because it's something that's so powerful. Are there any 3 practical tips, I guess I would ask, that you would give my audience to increase, whether they're just in entrepreneurship, they're a business owner, they want to get into it to begin with? What are 3 practical tips to increase their self performance?
On a daily basis, monthly basis, what are you looking for just
I'd
in
say,
general?
I'd say daily, but in general also.
Okay. Have two journals. One journal is for your emotional junk, and your goals, your ideas, your
Yeah.
thoughts. The other journal is for your business and your business only.
Yeah.
Uh, because you don't want to mix those up. Because you want to run your business like a sales manager. You want to run your business as if it's like when you're looking at your business on a weekly basis, you're thinking about it without the emotion.
Mhm.
You're thinking about it strategically, and you're asking strategic questions. Then in your life, you want to have your emotional journal, and you should be journaling every day. I've been a bit bad the last couple of weeks. I'm just honest like that when I'm talking.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I have filled. I'm going to slowly just move over here. I have filled two of these big moleskin journals
Yeah.
this year, for my emotional stuff. And I've it's I norm like we go back 4 or 5 years ago. I would take me even like 2 3 years ago. I wouldn't even fill a moleskin journal in a year. It would be like 2 years. My life. The
Yeah.
more I journaled, the more I got tactical with my journal, the thought that like hockey stick of my life of like taking bigger decisions and making risks and actually having those feedback loops
Yeah.
in your life to improve, massive impact. Massive impact. So that's my number one thing is journaling. We've talked about walks, we've talked about meditation. I think on a daily basis, no more than 3 things a day. And I've had some conversations with some of the productivity guys, I'm air quoting again, where they're like,
Mhm.
well, I can get 7 things done a day. No, you can't. You only get 3 big things done a day. The other things are small, and they're not 7 things. I get 50 things done a day, but there's only like, this is kind of counterintuitive what I just said there, but I don't count responding to an email as a thing. I don't count doing my email as a thing. I
Yeah.
don't count that. I don't count shallow, negative, zero value work or low dollar work as things. They are just things that happen. They happen in between the deep work.
Yeah.
3 segments of deep work a day at about an hour long. Even if it's just one a day at about 90 minutes, life changing. And I do that before first thing in the morning. So those are like my keystone habits. And again, just general from what we talked about in the podcast.
Yeah.
Get clear on what you want. Like, define success. Define what you're doing and writing. I mean, for me, if I was to describe my journey right now, I've ignored improving my writing skills. I have focused a lot on self-help and coaching books this year,
Mhm.
to expand my thinking around self-sabotage, upper limit issues,
Yeah.
you know, future self, like really understanding 10x as a qualitative process to help me with my clients, but also to help me.
Mhm.
But the last sort of month or so, I've been really focused, and into the new year, I'm this quarter or the next 2 or 3 months, I'm really focusing on digital writing. And there's one thing that I will say to anybody right now: I should have done that a year ago. It's one of my. It's not. I don't have regrets, but it's kind of one of my strategic ideas that I kind of felt like I'll just learn by doing.
Yeah.
I have probably done things. I have a habit of doing things the hard way. Getting punched in the face before you learn the lesson. That's
Totally.
that's kind of my operating system.
Yeah.
So for me, if you're a new entrepreneur or you want to become an entrepreneur, don't think about entrepreneurship. Think about having good structure, having your why, and having your success defined for you,
Yeah.
and lean into digital writing. Learn how to write online digitally. It you can't be the coach that you want to be, the freelancer you want to be, the web designer you want to be, insert any type of job you want to be without being able to communicate to people online. If you're great on video, go to YouTube. But digital writing, Twitter, Medium, LinkedIn, learn that shit. And get good at it. I'm not bad at it because obviously I've got 67,000 followers on Twitter, so I'm okay at it.
Right.
But yeah, maybe I'm being a bit hard on myself,
Yeah.
but I want to be great at it. I
Yeah.
just don't want to be okay at it. I want to be good at it, and I haven't put any real deliberate practice into it. Really learning structure. So that is, those would be my tips to anybody starting out. Don't make my mistake of like, yeah, I think that's my mistake. I focus so much on like, I want to be a coach. So I focus on becoming a better coach.
Yeah.
I focus on expanding into my freedoms of time, freedom of purpose, freedom of relationship. I focus on getting better. And that's when I help my clients. They have these bigger insights, but not to repeat myself, I've neglected the ability to attract clients depends on how you can actually talk to them online with your writing. So that's the rub.
I can really, really, really resonate with that position as well. A lot of my like growth has been, I think, again, your personal development or your professional development will never exceed your personal development. But in the same sense, you have to really develop professionally to be able to grow professionally. Like you have to develop the skills, you have to do the activities. And that comes down to, again, your self-performance has to come down to doing the important things day to day. Like, are you focusing on the shallow work, the 50 things that don't really matter? Or are you focusing on the 2 things that are going to have the massive impact on your growth? And I love that you said having multiple journals. It's funny enough that last week I was on a client call and my client was showing me he had 4 journals. He has 4 journals. He's a music artist. He has one for emotions. He has one for business. He has one for songs. Like you have to separate or your mind's just going to get so in so many like circles that like it's not going to know what to do. It's not going to be able to really compartmentalize what's going on in your life.
It's actually a trick that I picked up from behavioral economics.
Yeah.
I actually use different pens as well for each journal. So I have a more of a scribbly pen for my emotional journal, and I have a bit more of a finer pen for my business journal. So it's a little bit more of a, slower write. It's a little of a cleaner, and it's a mindset shift. It's because when I'm emotional stuff, I'm like, sometimes I just scribble and I draw and I'm like aggressive in there. And then with my business, it's a little bit more thoughtful. And that's the sort of nudging off, like training your brain that you're doing this thing right now. You're focusing on this thing and you use these little cues to help you do that. And I do the same with music. There are certain playlists that I only listen to when I'm working.
Yeah.
And that's, I do never listen to certain playlists that I have built on Spotify. I do not listen to them for pleasure. I listen to them when I'm working because I've designed those playlists for my brain to be like, we're in work mode.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's what I do with the journals. And you can go into so many different areas of your life to do that. I've done it with like, thought about it with, I'm a bit lazy with this one, but when I was working from home initially, I had a problem where I would just get up and be in my pajamas for hours. So I got into the habit of, even though I'm wearing tracksuit, sort of like sports gear, going and actually getting changed and having a shower, and actually it's like I was going to work, then to come back to say to myself, I'm working now. Because it's like I'm using this sort of like morning routine, because when you work from home and you're a business owner, it's very easy to go to your computer and the next thing you know, 4 hours have passed and you're like, oh my God, I'm still in my pajamas. This is terrible. Like, what this is. So that was a big thing for me, which I know I do. I do that quite easily now, but that was a behavioral nudge for me to say, hey, I'm starting my day. This is what I'm doing. I'm putting on my entrepreneur clothes.
Yeah.
Nike. Or expensive Lululemon type, workout t-shirts that are comfortable to sit around in all day because I like to be comfortable. But yeah, it's just little things like that. I mean, in so many areas of your life that you can do to nudge yourself into getting your mindset ready for self-performance. To help you actually. Some people call them runways to like get you to success. To like. I know how to runway into deep work. I know the steps. Like, I'm going to do these steps. That's going to get me the deep work. If I want to get back into working later in the afternoon, maybe put my blue light blocking glasses on, put a playlist on, get a pint of water, sit down at my computer, only have one tab open, telling my brain, this is work time. Yeah. So it's these little triggers that you do. So it's there's a lot you can do with that.
I think the most important part of everything that you just said right there is it comes back to kind of what we've talked about this whole podcast is we have to simplify. Like it's the simple things it's the simple shifts that make all of the massive change. And whether it's our business growth, our personal growth, it's really astounding what we can do when we simplify what we have to do and we just do the work. We stop dumb shit and we just act, right? Like it really is that big. of a change. And just to finish this off, I have one last question: is how has failure, or say apparent failure, set you up for success? Do you have, say, a favorite failure of yours that kind of propelled you into where you are today?
That's a good question. I don't think I can pick up one failure that really stands out. I think life is mostly failure. That's just the way it is. But not everything that we do is going to provide the massive results that we think they will. I mean, like meditating one day on a wet Tuesday morning isn't going to make you a guru, So it's about the sort of slow and steady consistency. For me, I think the failure that I would point to, or the one thing that gives me the most fuel, is probably the my 20s. Is that sort of like that low level consciousness of like not really understanding the game that I was in, not really understanding the world. I that was the mistake that I made, and I kind of lived for the weekend. So that fuel, that's just not one mistake.
Yeah,
that's a sort of a cultural in the Matrix kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And that mistake will probably live with me for the rest of my life. And one thing I will say, if anybody listening to this has those kind of mistakes, or that long-term mistakes in their life, don't set goals based on a regret from that, because those are negative gap goals, because you're chasing something. You're trying to catch up, you're trying to chase, you're trying to like make up for something. Those goals, while they might motivate you and get you to a certain level, they're not built on proper foundations that will actually take you to where you want to go. That's just something, because I experienced that. There we go. There's the failure I'll go for. There's the one. Talking about it is a lot of my goals when I first started setting goals were based on covering over the mistakes that I made. And if you ever read a book by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan called Gap and the Gain,
I already knew it.
These were gap goals. They were goals that were set from regret. They were goals that were set from me wanting to prove people wrong. There were goals set from me wanting to like get status in my life, to like have more material goods, to catch up with people. And when I got all those things, got the 6-figure job, got the life sort of, I got the girl, got the big job, got the corner office and stuff. They were hollow, because they weren't really goals that were based from what I wanted. They were goals set by the sort of weird gap thinking. And if anybody doesn't understand the gap in the game, the gap is when you set goals, or the gap is when you measure yourself to where you want to be, rather than measuring yourself from where you've come from. And the gain is always looking at where you've come from and then using that energy to take you to where you want to go based on what you've done, like using that sort of positive flip, being in the gain about things, seeing things as a positive. And I realized, I've known that concept for probably 2013, 14, 15. I heard Dan Sullivan talking about it, but when I read the book about a year or two ago, that was a big shift for me, because I realized that I had set a lot of goals based on the wrong emotional foundations. And that is huge, because you shouldn't be achieving goals and then having a dip of feeling sad afterwards. And that happened to me a couple of times, because the goals weren't, there was like, I didn't have this big future version of myself. Like I had said to myself, when this happens, I'll be happy. And that's gap thinking.
Yeah.
And you should be happy right now. Being in the game is happy right now. Being in the game is being grateful right now for everything you've got. You want to get bigger things in your life. You want to expand into more money, more time, more freedom. 100%. We all do. Better relationships. But you've already got a lot of those freedoms already today. And I think a lot of people are blinded to that. And then they chase more without understanding what they already have. And I think that's a trap that I definitely fell into with my goals, because a lot of my goals were based on the regrets that I had for effing around for 10 years.
I'm so blessed that you brought that up, because that's one of my favorite, I guess you could say, just ways to look at life. And something that Benjamin Hardy says, one of my favorite quotes, is that happiness becomes a burden when you have to go out and get it. If you're trying to go get happiness, you're trying to go get success, it's never going to be fulfilling. And I think that's partly part of the reason that you. Oh, I could go all day about Benjamin Hardy. Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah.
his books and his mindset towards things really puts a different perspective to have in
He's
life.
he's elite. He's relentless. He is relentless.
And I think when it comes to like same for you, like a lot of the reason that we don't achieve the goals we want to achieve is because we're setting goals that really aren't aligned with what we want deep down. And so we set the goals to fill a void when we're going to avoid the things that we really don't want deep down. And I just want to say I'm genuinely grateful to have you on this podcast. I think there's a lot of value that a lot of people could take from this episode. And if they're trying to find you, where can they find you, Stephen?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Steve Timoney. That's at STEVETIMONEY. That's my name is STEPHEN, Stephen, but I got at Steve Timoney for my on Twitter. And then I have my website, which is actually my full Sunday name, STEPHEN TIMONEY, StephenTimoney.com. That's where I hang out the most. I'm also on LinkedIn under Stephen Timoney, STEPHEN TIMONEY on LinkedIn. I have stopped posting and opening. I've deleted Instagram and TikTok from my phone recently, but I'm at Steve Timoney on both of those as well. But I don't currently post on those because when I was doing a dumb shit list recently, TikTok and Instagram were at the top of that list. So I'm focusing very much on Twitter, and then I'm slowly bringing myself around to growing on LinkedIn. And then obviously I have a podcast as well that you can see on my website. And that podcast is called the SPS Podcast, which is the Self-Performance Strategies Podcast, where I mostly talk about things as just a single guy not one host talking about stuff. But I usually do a deep dive once a month with a large creator on Twitter, usually people who've got over 100,000 followers. And I speak to them about their businesses and stuff on that. But most of the podcast is just me passing on advice and thoughts around self-performance.
And I want to harp on that because my podcast started off as solo episodes. It was like 100 episodes straight of solo. And I was like, it was the barrier to entry. I made it as a habit. And I think there's a lot of value you can find from diving deep into our brains, especially when it doesn't have to always be an interview style. So that's definitely a great podcast to listen to. Again, I'm grateful to have you on the podcast, and we'll be talking soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.